Hi everybody, this is section 6.2, polynomial divisions and the division algorithm, and this is from our Hawkes Learning College Algebra textbook for Math 101. Alright, so before we dive into polynomial division, we're just going to review division by a whole number just to look at the steps, because the steps remain the same, it's just we're working with polynomials and polynomial division. So we are going to do just a simple division problem. We're going to take 264 and divide it by 5. So that means that when we write it out, my 5 will be on the outside, my 264 will be on the inside. So 5, we know, does not go into 2, so we can put a 0 there. But 5 will go into 26, and it goes in 5 times. And then I multiply. I do 5 times 5, and I know that that is 25. And then we have to subtract 25 from 26, so we get a 1. And we bring down our 4. So what we did is we divided, we multiplied, we subtracted, and then we brought down. Now we're going to do the same thing. 5 goes into 14 2 times, so I divide it again. Now I'm going to multiply. 5 times 2 is 10. Subtract, so multiplied, subtract, and we get a 4, and there's no more to bring down, so we won't bring down again, but we have a remainder of 4, and we can write it like that, or we can write the answer as 52 and 4/5, and we did that because we have a remainder of 4 out of 5 left over. So that's, again, just a quick review of long division to help us with polynomial division. All right, and here are some tips just to help us with our polynomial long division. The first thing is you want to arrange the terms in your polynomial in descending order. So if you have an x cubed term, an x squared term, an x term, and a coefficient, you want them in descending order. So you want x cubed, x squared, x, and then 0, or the constant term. And if you're missing a term, say we start with x to the 4th power, and we have x squared x, but no x cubed, then you're going to add a 0 x cubed in there. And it's really like a placeholder to help with that division so that we are combining like terms. And then what we are going to do is we're going to divide the first term in the dividend by the first term in the divisor. Now, just a reminder, your dividend is the number that's on the inside of the division house. The divisor is the number on the outside. So the divisor is on the outside of this division house. There's the divisor, and the dividend's on the inside. And again, this is an important step here is to divide by the first term in each. So we don't use the whole problem out in that divisor area. And then, so we divided. Next, we're going to multiply the entire divisor by the result. So now we're going to use that entire divisor on the outside, and you'll see that when we look at the problem. After we multiply, then we are going to subtract the product from the dividend. And here's one thing, we are subtracting that whole dividend. So we need to remember to do minus and then in parentheses, and we have to distribute that minus or that -1 to everything in those parentheses. And again, we'll see that example shortly. Then we'll bring down the rest of the original dividend and form a new dividend, repeat the process over. So, but the steps I want you to really remember is think we are going to divide, then we multiply, then we subtract, and then we bring down, and we do it over again if we have to. All right, so now we are going to divide the polynomial x squared plus 2x minus 24 by the polynomial of x plus 6. So when we write it, our x plus 6 is going to go on the outside, and x squared plus 2x minus 24 will go on the inside. And so again, we divide first. Step 1 is to divide. And we are going to divide x squared, so the first term in the dividend, by the first term in the divisor. So we're going to divide it by x. And x squared divided by x gives us x. So I'm going to put that up top there. Now we are going to multiply. So I'm going to do x, which is the result here, times my entire divisor. So x plus 6, and that gives me x squared plus 6x. Now step 3, we're going to subtract. All right, so now here's where we have to remember. Use those parentheses. This is where people make the biggest mistake. So we have x squared plus 6x, but we have to distribute this negative sign. So remember, it's like that -1 there. So when we distribute, we get a negative x squared, that plus a -1, and then a negative 6x. So now what you want is your first terms there, your x squareds or whatever the first term is in the problem you're dealing with, you want that to cancel. And then you can combine like terms here. So 2x plus negative 6x will give me a negative 4x. And then we'll bring down the negative 24. All right, now we're going to start over. So we brought down, bring down. So now I'm going to divide again, and this time I'm going to divide my first term, my negative 4x, again by x, and that equals a negative 4, so I'll put that up here. Okay, now when we multiply, we're going to do negative 4 times x plus 6, so it'll be negative 4x minus 24. And then we subtract, so I'm going to do minus negative 4x minus 24. But again, when we distribute that -1, it becomes a positive 4x and a positive 24, which helps us because, again, this first term in that expression, you want it to cancel out. And then here, negative 24 plus positive 24 gives me a 0. So this is like dividing, and we have no remainder. And what this means is that x plus 6 is a factor of x squared plus 2x minus 24. It's also a 0. It's where where the graph crosses over the x-axis. So my answer here is x minus 4. And one way to check it, if you wanted to, is if you FOILed x plus 6 times x minus 4, you would get x squared plus 2x minus 24. It's a lot of steps, but once you get used to it, it's not bad. And if you're panicking right now and you're like, this is crazy, I don't know if I'll be able to do it, don't stress. When we look at synthetic division, you'll like it a lot better, I can guarantee. All right, next we have a rather long polynomial long division. And again, I'm going to show you how to do it with the long division way, and then I'm going to show you synthetic division. You'll probably like the synthetic division better. I do want you to practice both ways because they both, have their uses. Sometimes synthetic division is the way to go. Other times you need to do a little bit of long division. So again, either way will work. Or I want you to know both ways. All right, so we are going to divide 6x to the 5th minus 5x to the 4th plus 10x to the 3rd minus 15x to the 2nd minus 19 by 2x squared minus x plus 3. Now, for this one, we have x to the 5th, x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared. We're missing that x term. So what we are going to do is when we write out this problem, and we are going to divide, it's 2x squared minus x plus 3 by, I don't know if I left enough room, 6x to the 5th minus 5x to the 4th plus 10x to the 3rd minus 15x squared plus 0x minus 19. And I squished it in there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase it and rewrite it for us, because that one, there's not enough room to do the work there. But as you can see, what I did is I added in my placeholder to help us out. So let me keep erasing real quick. Okay, so let's rewrite this. We have 2x squared minus x plus 3 divided into 6x to the 5th power minus 5x to the 4th power plus 10x cubed minus 15x squared plus or minus, doesn't really matter, 0x, because anything times 0 is 0, so you're just adding in that placeholder, minus 19. All right, so the first thing we are going to do is, remember, we are going to divide. So I'm going to take this 6x to the 5th power and divide it by my 2x squared. So that will end up giving me 3x to the 3rd power. 3x to the 3rd power. Okay, now we are going to multiply. So I'm going to do 3x cubed times, let me erase that, I need more space. All right, I'm going to put it down here. So we're going to do 3x cubed times 2x squared minus x plus 3. So that is going to give me, I'll put it in parentheses, 6x to the 5th power minus 3x to the 4th plus 9x cubed. All right, now again, remember we have to distribute that negative sign. So that means that this will become a plus. We have that negative one there, so that's a negative. That becomes a positive, and that becomes a negative. Now let's do our math, and again, these first terms, they cancel out. Excellent. Next, negative 5x to the 4th plus 3x to the 4th will give us negative 2x to the 4th plus 10x cubed minus 9x cubed will leave us with an x cubed. And then we can bring down the rest of the problem. We don't have to bring it all down, but we'll bring down the negative 15x squared. We'll just go ahead and bring it all down. Plus 0x minus 19. All right, now we're going to divide. This time we're going to take negative 2x to the 4th and divide it by 2x squared. So that's going to leave me with a negative x squared, or 1x squared. Okay, so now we are going to multiply x squared times a negative x squared times 2x squared minus x plus 3. And that's going to give me negative 2x to the 4th plus x cubed, because two negatives make a positive, minus 3x squared. All right, and we'll distribute that negative. So that becomes a positive, that becomes a negative, and that becomes a positive. So the first terms cancel out. Here, it's kind of nice. The second terms also cancel out. And then we're left with negative 15x squared plus 3x squared will give me a negative 12x squared. And let me erase over here a little bit to make some more room. We will bring down my 0x minus 19. All right, and let's start over again. We are going to divide now negative 12x squared by 2x squared, and that's going to give us a negative 6. Okay, so now let's do negative 6. Put it over here. Negative 6 times 2x squared minus x plus 3. That will give me negative 12x squared plus 6x minus 18. But then we have to distribute, so that negative 1, so that becomes a positive, that becomes a negative, and that's a positive. So here, my front two terms cancel out. I have negative 6x and minus 1. All right, but here, because there's nothing else to bring down, this is really going to be our remainder. And now we have that 2x squared. It's larger than that negative 6x. So this is our remainder, our leftovers, because we have nothing else to bring down, so it won't go in. So we would write that up here as plus, and then just put your negative 6x minus 1. But you always put it over because it's the remainder, what we divided by, that divisor. So 2x squared minus x plus 3. So that is our answer. Now, that took a lot of steps. We could have had more, depending on what we were dividing by. So, long division, while sometimes it's useful and needed, it's hard. So now we're going to take a look at synthetic division to help us simplify the process. All right, now we're going to look at another way to do polynomial division, and this is called synthetic division. Synthetic division is a shortened version of polynomial long division, and it can be used when the divisor is in the form of x minus c. So you really want to be dividing by not like the 2x squared minus x plus 3 that we had before, but just like x minus 5, x plus 4. And to do synthetic division, we're going to take out the variables. It's more efficient because it takes out the variables, and you create a table to find your coefficients, and then you just add the variables in at the end. And your variables, we'll take a look at how to put those in and see what they represent, but they're really just one less than the power you started with. So when we do synthetic division, here are some steps. I'm going to show you what they are. But if your divisor is x minus c, so again, it can't be x squared. It has to be x minus a number or x plus a number. You're going to write down c followed by the coefficients of the dividend. And what they are really saying here is this is supposed to be a zero of the function. So to figure out what c is, you would take your equation, like if I had x minus 5, put it equal to 0 and solve it. If I solve that equation by adding 5 to both sides, then I know that x equals 5, and that would be my c variable. If I had something like x plus 4, again, we're seeing if it's a zero of the function, so we want to solve it for 0 to find out what we would use for c, and we would solve and we would get x equals negative 4, so that would be my c. So really, kind of think of it like this. It is the opposite of that c term. If it's a negative, then it becomes a positive when you do your synthetic division, or vice versa. Then you're going to write the leading coefficient of the dividend on the bottom row, multiply c by a place value at the bottom, and place the product in the next column in the second row, add the values in this column, and then repeat those steps again. And like I said, once you add the numbers, you multiply again, add it, put it in the second column, add it, and I will show you, like, these are really steps for you to come back and look at later on if you want to review how to do the synthetic division. But once I show you with the actual steps, by looking at actual problem, you'll be fine. Now, the one thing you do have to do is when you get done, the numbers at the bottom row are the quotient plus the remainder. So what we have to do is we have to put the variables in. We have to do the first term of the quotient will have a degree less than the first term of the dividend. So if we were dividing and we started with x squared, then my first coefficient would be x. If we started with like 5x to the 7th power, then when I write my answer, it would be x to the 6th power. And again, I will show this to you as well. You'll take a look at it, so don't stress over that. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, we're going to get one to look at for synthetic division, and we are going to take negative 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 9x plus 7, and we want to divide it by x minus 2. And again, I could do the long division, but it's a little bit harder. Let's do synthetic division. So what we are going to do is we are going to make a little table. So the first thing you're going to do is make, this is your divisor here. Make that little box. That's where you're going to put what you're dividing supposedly by. Now remember, that's going to be, this is where your C value goes right here. And your C comes from what you're dividing by. So again, to find that C value, it's supposed to be a 0. So take it. Now, you can do this in your head. You don't have to write it out every time. But x minus 2, if it equals 0, x equals a positive 2. So we're going to put our 2 there. Now next to it, and leaving a little space, we're going to put all of our coefficients. So we are going to put negative 2, 8, negative 9, and you do want to keep the signs with them, and 7. All right, now what I like to do is I like to draw a line. So this is the second row right here, and this is the answer row, the quotient row. All right, the first step, always bring down that first number. So bring down your negative 2. Now what you need to do is you take the 2 and you multiply it times this number. So you multiply these two numbers. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. You put that answer right underneath that 8. Okay, so you multiply, put it underneath the 8, then you add those two values. So what is 8 plus negative 4? And you end up with a positive 4, which goes down here. Okay, next, do 2 times 4. So you start it over. 2 times 4 is 8. Put it up here. Add those two numbers together, you get a negative 1. Now, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Add those two numbers together, and you get a 5. That is it for synthetic division. We have done our division, and so our answer here, if we were to write it out, we started with x cubed. So when I write my answer, it's going to be negative 2x squared, because you always go 1 power less. Plus 4x minus 1, and then this last part here, that's always your remainder. So we have to write it, when we write it, plus, it would be 5 divided by x minus 2. And that is our synthetic division. It's a lot easier. And really what this is telling us is this problem here, we can divide it by x minus 2, but x minus 2 is not a factor because it doesn't work out nice and evenly with a 0 remainder. All right, so we're going to do another synthetic division. Now we're going to divide negative 2x to the 4th power plus 11x cubed minus 5x squared minus 3x plus 15. And here they're telling us c is 5. So they are giving us the c value. It would have been x minus 5 because that's what it gives us, positive 5. So here's our box. We got our box here. They wrote out the coefficients, negative 2, 11, 5, negative 5, negative 3, and 15. Bring down your negative 2. Now, 5 times negative 2 gives me a negative 10. And then we add those two together, so I get a 1. 1 times 5 is 5. Negative 5 plus positive 5 would give me a 0. 5 times 0 is 0. Negative 3 plus 0 is negative 3. And 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. So we get a 0 there. And really, when you get a 0 in this last box, it means that there's no remainder. So now to write my answer, again, start with 1 power, 1 degree less than the x to the fourth. So it would be negative 2 x to the third power plus 1x squared, or just write your x squared. There's no x term because it's 0. So then it would just be minus 3. And again, this remainder is 0, so you don't have to put the plus 0. But that's it. Synthetic division, like I said, once you get the hang of it, is super nice and easy, and it tends to be obviously more popular than the long division. All right, and so here is our last one that we're going to do. We are going to divide. I'm going to move this over just a little bit, I think. There we go. Okay. We are going to divide 3x to the 8th power plus 9x to the 7th minus x cubed minus 3x squared plus x minus 1. And c is negative 3. Now, if you notice, when they wrote it out up here, they did add in a whole bunch of zeros because we don't have placeholders. We have x to the 7th, so we need x to the 6th, x to the 5th, and x to the 4th. So they added in those zeros as placeholders to help us out. And you would want to do that on your problem when you're writing out the coefficients. Bring down that 3. All right, now, negative 3 times 3, negative 9. So when you add those together, you get a 0. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 times negative 3 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. Negative 3 times 0 is another 0. We'll get a 0 there. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. Negative 1 plus 0 is negative 1. And then negative 3 times negative 1 gives us a positive 3. So that would be a 0 when we add it. Now we have another 0 here because negative 3 times 0 is 0. Add 1 plus 0 is 1. Negative 3 times 1 is a negative 3. So we end up with a negative 4 right here. And again, because this is your last one, this is a remainder. You do have a remainder in this problem. Now when we write out our answer, it is going to be 3. X to the 8th is what we started at, so it would be 3x to the 7th. Now this is our 6th right here, 5th, 4, 3, so then it would be minus x squared. This will be our x term, plus 1, and then our remainder, you would just write it as plus negative 4 over, and it would be, if it's x minus 3, then we know the original was x plus 3, if they ask us to write out that answer. So that is it for this. Now I am going to post another video on synthetic division to kind of help you out if you want extra help. Again, it's a little time consuming, but it's not bad once you get used to it.